Sweet. It looks like we're live. So, yeah, if you're in a good place, I'm going to go ahead and switch us over in 15 seconds. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and you're hot.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Introvert Dating Success Show, courtesy of introvertdatingsuccess.com. I'm your host, as always, Harry Wilmington. This is the show, and that is the website where you can go to learn how to date as your authentic, introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about a few things here. So, first off, we're going to be answering a question from a guy that posted on Reddit. And the question I'm going to bring out today is: should you sign a prenup before you get married? Is this something that you should sign? Should you worry about how she's going to feel about it? It's a topic that is not really talked about a lot. And then I believe there are a lot of guys out there that would want to do a prenup, but they fear how the woman's going to handle that. And should that come up? And then what happens if the roles were reversed and she wants you to sign a prenup? That should be something that's discussed. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about is it possible to have too much sarcasm in your relationship, and can that affect people's feelings? There's a note I got from a guy. I read a note from a woman that posted about something her boyfriend said to her and how she took it. And I kind of want to go into that because I believe it's always good to have some level of jokiness in your relationship, but at what level does sarcasm become something that could really be harmful to the other person? And then finally, I want to talk about what I call the 7 stages of accepting the realities of female attraction. And I kind of stole this a little bit from the whole idea about the 7 stages of grief. Like when somebody dies, oftentimes there's 7 stages that you just go through emotionally to be able to go from like this incident happening and you being unaware of it to being able to accept the reality of what that incident is bringing to your life from the here on out. And I think a similar process happens for a lot of guys, unbeknownst to them, when they start studying up on the things about female attraction that actually work. And it really can be like a hit to their system, and it's like unexpected the way that they think it should work versus how it actually works. And in the process of that, I know for myself, I found myself going through these various stages and coming out the other end being better for it, but going back realizing like, oh, I don't think a lot of guys are actually aware that there is a process they're going to go through when they first encounter these new truths about females and attraction and about what really works. So I want to talk about all that stuff today. As always, for more of these shows, you can go to introvertdatingsuccess.com. You can check out the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any place you can find podcasts. The Introvert Dating Success podcast is there. Also, we do this show live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, right here on protestparty.tv. So if you want to join in the chat stream, be sure to join us over there for the show. All right. So let's go ahead and get into this first posting that I have here. So this is going to be talking about, should you sign a prenup before getting married? And there's a guy here that's having a situation with his fiance whereby she initially didn't want to sign a prenup, and now she does for a very interesting reason. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. And it goes a little something like this. So this guy says, a little background here is that I make around $250,000 a year. My fiance makes around $65,000 a year. We've both been divorced. So this is, I want to, so just to stop here for a quick second, okay? Oftentimes, for people that have already been through this process of divorce, they understand the how messy and how cataclysmic the event of divorce can be, already on your emotions, obviously, but also when it comes to dealing with splitting up the assets, going to court, dealing with legal fees. And these are things that you have to divvy out, whether it's like, are you going to split everything right down the middle? If there's kids involved, there's going to be alimony. How much alimony is coming from the dad or from the mom? Because sometimes moms do pay child support and stuff like that. And there's a wide variety of issues that come up that a lot of people are blindsided by. And what happens originally is when the person first got married, they didn't ever think about them possibly breaking up with the person they're with. Like they really thought it was going to be forever. And therefore there was no need to worry about the outs of what could happen if it doesn't work out. Because most men, especially, go into the marriage thinking, I'm going to be the man, she's going to like me for me, and it's going to work out so great that there's no need to think about things like divorce. So why would I plan for one? Like they have this thought of like, if I start planning for divorce, then it's most likely going to happen. And so since these two have been through a divorce, this guy's already been through one and realized, oh, you know what? I went in the first time and did not prep myself for anything bad to happen. But even if you go to a marriage with the best of intentions, bad things could happen. Let me make sure that I'm set. So that's why he brought this up. Continuing on, he says, I asked for a prenup protecting my existing assets, two rental properties worth around 400,000 together, my retirement account, my house which I live, existing savings, and just sentimental things. I offered to pay for a lawyer for her and make anything earned after the wedding fair game in a divorce split. So basically saying like whatever we come to with it, whatever we come to the marriage with, we get to keep that stuff on our own. And then once we get married, when we're in the confines of the marriage, anything that we do during that time will split if this doesn't work out. So, so he says, in my previous divorce, my ex took a lot that I had before we ever even met each other, and took a lot of things with sentimental value just to hurt me. And this is the thing, guys, that you're not prepared for. Is you're thinking right now, in terms of the woman you're with being a rational person that would not do you emotional harm and would only want the best for you. And that can be very true up until the point where divorce is thrown out there, where now there are hurt feelings and she is feeling bitter and she wants to get you back and retaliate. And that sweet, kind woman you married might turn into a woman that is going to drag you through the courts and want to get a lawyer to take you for everything that you've got. Okay. And that's what this woman did. Like she just took stuff that was his because he cared about it and she wanted to see him hurt. This is the thing that legitimately could happen if things in your marriage do not turn out the way you want them to. I floated the idea of a prenup and she was not okay with it. It hurt her feelings, and she said I was planning for a divorce if I want a prenup. Now, mind you, this woman has already been through a divorce before, okay? But you've got to think about why she's saying this. The reality is that in this country, when a divorce happens, the courts traditionally are going to be more in favor of the woman's side of things. We already get a bad rep for if we any kind of divorce happens at all, it's automatically our fault. We must have been the bad guy. We did something to make her feelings get hurt. We must have possibly cheated on her, and so she deserves to be taken care of. So the majority of financial burden and pain, if this thing goes away, is going to fall towards the guy. And she knows this because she went through a divorce. Now, he doesn't say in terms of their divorce what she was putting her ex-husband through, because women will typically come to the table and say, oh, this guy hurt me and it didn't work out, so we just broke up and yada, yada, yada. And people are going to always make themselves the hero in their own story. So she's going to make it look like whatever happened, it was more or less the guy's fault and I was the victim and how dare. But that could be the story she's telling you. That does not mean that you want to fall for that. Because again, if a divorce comes up, you're going to be the bad guy now. And you're going to be the one that she's telling everybody, he hurt me, he did this, whatever. And she's going to come with the story and the sad tears and all this stuff. And you're going to be left out in the cold. And I've seen this firsthand. I've seen friends of mine who were nice guys that married nice women, that when the divorce came, they wanted to, be able to have a balance of things and want to see their children and want to do stuff. And the woman was just like, no, can't happen. I'm going to fight you. I'm not going to let these things happen. And this is real life, people. So just be mindful that that could be a thing, and that the woman that you love right now could turn, and you might want to be prepared for that in the event that it does. Continuing on, so she hurt feeling. That's what you also hear too, says, oh, this hurts my feelings. How could you think? And because for them, it's an emotional decision. It's like you're almost saying, I don't trust you, and therefore we need to get this thing. And that's how they take it. You're just looking at it like it's a business decision. When you go into any kind of business with anybody, contracts. I'm in Hollywood here. I get into business people, contracts. You sign out things because you hope for the best. But if things don't go the way that you expect them to, or one person says this isn't working for me anymore, you need to have a workout that's going to be beneficial to everybody and not keep you stuck in a situation that's bad, or worse, makes you financially responsible overall for this breakup happening, but continuing on, I'll finish reading this up. She had this idea that when we married, everything becomes ours, which is typically a thought a lot of women have, is that, oh, yours becomes mine and I can take half of that when I leave you later. We've been dating for 4 years and had very few bumps in the road. So I don't see a super high risk of divorce, but I do acknowledge it's there. Anyways, I love her. And I said, sure. So he's saying basically, he said, sure, let's not get a prenup. I know it's all about love and whatever. And she was able to initially talk him out of this idea, which women are great at that because we look at them and we're like, oh, we don't want to hurt their feelings. They have these nice figures and they're so sweet. And I don't want to hurt her by bringing this idea up or make her think that I don't trust her. And that's the trick. The trick right there, like, oh, they're going to make you feel like you're bad because you want to get your ducks in a row for the end times in case the end times happen. And in her emotional state, she's thinking this means you don't trust her and you don't love her as much as you do, or you're thinking bad things are going to happen. And that's a fear that a lot of women will bring to the table. Let them bring that fear and say, hey, babe, I do love you, but I recognize realistically the divorce rate in this country is like above 50 or 60% at this point. And then even the marriages that stay together, they're not always the happiest of marriages. So there's enough statistical data out there that says a lot of people go into marriages with good intentions, but it ends up not working out the way they do. And so I'm going into this thinking we're going to get along great, but I also have to be mindful that anything could change and things could change. Think about this, guy. You could have a woman that loves you to death, cares about you, and then she has her first kid. She has postpartum depression. She never gets out of it. She's constantly yelling at you and mad at you now. And now she's saying, I'm not happy. I want to leave. And it's nothing you did. It could just be postpartum. It could be life situation changing. But now it's like she decides she wants to leave. And you have no contingency plan. So you didn't bring it up. She did. But now, because she brings it up and wants it, now there's no prenup involved. And she can just get anything out of you that she wants. And again, it happens all the time. Okay. So, but this is taking into account the things that he brought. So again, let's recap. He said he has assets he wants to protect, his retirement account, his house, savings, etc. And she's like, but feelings, and I get hurt, and oh my God. Okay. Fast forward a couple months, her grandmother abruptly died. Wasn't expected. Grandmother was quite healthy before, had a heart attack. Apparently, the grandmother left the entire estate to her, and it's worth roughly $800,000. Now, the tables have turned, and she wants a prenup protecting, quote, these assets from me, which I was fine with, but she doesn't want to sign my prenup in return for that. Her reasoning is that her grandmother wouldn't have wanted her wealth to, quote, leave her direct family, and that there's a reason it was left all to me and not my siblings or parents, end quote, and that the prenup must not have been important to me because I threw out the idea after minimal pushback. So there's a few things here. One, that pushback that she gave him was a test. This is an example of what happens when women test. It's called testing your masculine strength. They come to you, they throw in the pity tears, and they see if that's going to sway you to change your mind. And when you do that, you lose, okay? Because they're not looking for a guy that's easily swayed, because if she could easily sway you, she's going to think, what other things outside of me could he be easily swayed by that could result in us not being protected, us losing money, et cetera, okay? But now, so that's the first thing. And then secondly, notice how quick she was to change her mind as soon as the idea of the prenup now benefits her. So beforehand, when he had 400K in houses and he had his little assets and savings here and there, oh, I don't think we should have a prenup, because secretly she's like, I want some of that. But now that she has $800,000 to lose, now she's like, oh, wait, you know what? We do need to have a prenup. We should totally sign something, because, you know, if something doesn't work out, my family wants me to keep this money, and it is my money. It's not our money, even though she earlier said that coming into a marriage, she thought that everything that he owned would be ours. But now this money that she's bringing isn't going to be ours. It's going to be mine. Okay. And this is the thing that I'm pointing out, guys, is that if the shoe were reversed and it worked in her favor, more often than not, women will be fine. You got to think about, in today's society, there are a lot of women that have higher paying jobs than men, whether it's like they're lawyers, they're in high positions in certain businesses and offices, they're doctors, whatever. They're making $200,000-300,000 a year. These women will meet a guy that's only making $80,000 or $90,000, which is still a pretty good amount, but it's still less than hers. And she'll have no problem bringing to the table, hey, we should have a prenup because, you know, these are kind of my assets and, you know, I want to make sure whatever. But when it's reversed and it's you, understand there's going to be some pushback. There's going to be these feelings that are thrown at you. There's going to be these things that are going to be told to you to see if you're going to switch and change your mind, because she knows that if she can do that, that she's going to have a bigger payout if it doesn't work out. And I want you guys to be mindful of that, okay? Is that ultimately, this is all business. When it comes to things in a marriage like money and assets, Those are not emotional things. Those are tangible assets that if the marriage doesn't work out, you need to protect to be able to continue to keep those or have a more fair split on your end versus her taking all this stuff. Okay. So he says, I'm at a loss here. In one regard, I'm glad we had prenup discussions before because it brought out these sides of us. But I'm really wondering if this 4-year relationship that has been full of nothing but love and support for each other until now is even salvageable. She's not willing to budge on her own prenup like I was, and I'm finding the whole thing very frustrating. So these are the kind of discussions that it's important to have before you're married, because just financial discussions in general, a big reason that people break up in marriages is because they don't agree on certain financial things. And so the earlier you can get that talked about, preferably before you get married, then those things will already be established in terms of like the kind of assets you guys have, who's paying the bills, who's going to look after the money, who's going to like, do whatever with those various money accounts. Those need to be discussed. But in terms of prenup stuff, like, I don't care if you don't have like $10 in the bank, you have like $8 in the bank. Okay. That might be the $8 you want to protect. Okay. And I like what the guy said earlier, talking about how he wanted to have it where they have their own assets protected coming into the marriage, but then anything they earn during the marriage will be an even split. That to me is a fair assessment. Ultimately, though, wanting a prenup or not wanting a prenup is a very much an emotional conversation that you need to be able to have with your significant other prior to getting married, because that is a thing that nobody ever plans for the worst thing to happen or the end of a marriage. But again, most just like building a business, when you're building a business, most people aren't planning in the process of that business being built for it to end. They're hoping that it's going to work out, but they're also very mindful that most businesses don't make it past year 5. Okay. Most marriages by year 7 are dissolved. There's that 7-year itch that happens where they're both kind of thinking like, I don't want to be in this anymore. And so that's a realistic thing that could come up. So you now might think things are going to be good. You 7 years from now might realize either you or her want to get out. And if that happens, you're going to be so much happier that you prepared and outplanned in the event that that were to happen, even though you're hoping for the best. Okay. So that is the first thing that I wanted to discuss with you guys today. So I just thought was very, very important. Let me check the chat stream real quick here. Somebody said sarcasm can be too much when it creates a slap in the face. We're actually getting to that next. We're going to talk about sarcasm and the effect that it can have on a relationship. So let's go ahead and get into that. Actually, let me go to that right here. So there's a message here that I saw on Reddit, and I thought it was interesting. The title is called "Boyfriend Made Fun of My Flat Chest and I Can't Shake what he said." And I saw this, and it's very much a lightweight message because they're very early in the relationship. They've only been dating for a year, but I think it's important to point these kinds of things out very early on in the relationship, because I think that honestly, people have been taught some really bad communication habits. And I think a lot of times when we're growing up within our own families, we hear sarcasm and we hear jokes, and a lot of it's aimed towards us. And as kids, we don't really have a means to fight back against that. Like, we can at some point be like, hey, this isn't cool. But honestly, it's really hard to go to your dad, your mom, your cousins, your aunts and uncles and say this speech when they're just saying like, it's a joke. Don't be such a punk. Take it. So we end up thinking, oh, this is a perfectly fine way to communicate, by sarcasm, by making these overt jokes to the person, talking about their whatevers. And in the process of that, we can be very unaware that some of the things we're saying and doing on a joking level is being taken by the other person as hurtful. And the thing is, when it first starts, it might not seem like it's a big deal. Like, you might say something to the person and they might appear to take it jokingly and taking it in stride, but you never are sure of what things you're saying to a person that's going to be stuck in their mental memory, And I know there were times when I was in my middle school and high school years, for example, where I got called a whole lot of names that stuck in my psyche for a lot of years, and I can still hear echoes of to this day. But in terms of, me hearing it long after they were gone, like I was getting called weird and strange and dumb and stupid in middle school and high school, well, mostly middle school. But then, like, when I go into college and I'm trying to start dating girls, what is in my head? Well, they want to date me because I'm weird, I'm stupid, I'm dumb. And it's like, they've been gone for so many years, So you never know what that thing is that you're just joking about that's going to stick with the woman and then make her feel like you don't like her in a certain way, or she starts questioning herself and how she really is in the world. And you're just not aware of that. So I'm going to read this message that this woman wrote because I think it really illustrates what I'm talking about. So she says, to start off with, we've been together for a year and we have a pretty jokeful relationship, always messing with each other. Last night, my boyfriend was playing video games and we were talking about what superhero we would be for a brief moment. he told me I would be someone called Jean Grey, and I had no idea who that was. So for those of you that don't know, Jean Grey was in the X-Men. Okay. Let's see. So I laughed and said, "Is she someone? Is she hot?" And he said, "I mean, she's a character, and you know how over sexualized they make comic characters." And I said, "Yeah, they all got big boobs and a small waist." He said very enthusiastically, "Yeah, they do. And you don't have big boobs." And the way he said it made it clear he wasn't joking. Now, I know I have small boobs. I'm aware of this. I'm a 32A. I'm naturally a smaller woman, but he always told me he was a butt guy, and I have plenty of that. I'm not really self conscious about it because I've never had anyone have a problem with it or say anything negative about it. And honestly, I think I have a cute body. He then says, "But that's okay. We can just have sex with the lights off, and I can pretend you have big boobs." Okay, ouch. He could tell it hurt my feelings, apologized, and told me he was joking. I said, "Yeah, whatever, I'm going to go to bed." He kissed me goodnight and told me he loved me. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but now I have this urge to get a boob job, and I haven't hated my chest this much in a while. What do I do? So here's something where, again, she mentioned they have a very jokey relationship. So they're typically probably sending jabs back and forth to each other. And that is a type of relationship that a lot of people have. Is it the best relationship to have? I'm going to say that that's ultimately up to you. If you're a person that has a thick skin and that's how you grew up taking jabs back and forth, and the other person is too, and you can take it, then more props to you. I know in my family we were very sarcastically jokey also, but it was never really in an insulting way. It was more like in an intellectual way where it's like, certain words, like the way you say certain words or bring about certain phrases, or even how I joke now is very much like somebody will say something and I'll like relate it to like a song, or I'll take the words and reframe them in another way where it's really more about the wordplay of what they said, and it's not specifically geared towards them. Like it's not calling them dumb or stupid or saying you have these flaws that you need to get rid of or whatever, in that way. And I think because I went through that personally, where I had those kind of jabs at me, I just learned very early on that that doesn't make me feel good. Therefore, I can imagine giving those kind of jabs to somebody else could also hurt. And especially because you don't know what that person's journey has been through life, to where the thing you're joking about could be a really big deal for them. Like for this girl example, she's saying she didn't really have any kind of subconscious about being big up here, but clearly when he said this thing, it hit a nerve with her. So she could have had been a girl where, like, growing up, she constantly got joked on or told that, oh, you're not going to have a good enough figure, or maybe she got teased for looking like a tomboy. You don't know what her journey is, but to bring up this thing where it's like, oh, and you have small boobs and blah blah blah, like, he says it jokingly, but she could be taking that a lot more intensely than he even realizes. And that's the thing with sarcasm. I heard someone one time I said sarcasm is like the cousin of like bitterness. And it's because a lot of times when people are being sarcastic, it's because they don't really know the way to either phrase the request that they have in terms of things that they want changed, or they're saying a thing like subconsciously in a way to like make themselves be more above the other person. So in this case, he said a thing about the boobs. He might not have been saying it maliciously consciously, but maybe he was thinking like, oh, like I need to give a little jab at her so I feel better about myself. Like, you have no idea. But that's why I tend to be very careful with my words. I tend to believe that you should be speaking life into the person you're with and uplifting them and saying things that are positive about them versus being negative, because this is the thing that, again, it could stick in her head for a week. It could stick in her head for the next 5 or 10 years. She could be 10 years down the line, still with this guy, talking about something random, and he says something, and she'll be like, oh, like that time you mentioned my boobs are too small. Like, you never know that thing's going to stick. So she had a little update here. She said, just a little update. We went to the gas station this morning, and when we got home, he was staring at my legs and butt. I was like, are you staring at my butt? And he said, heck yeah, I am. Those legs too. Honestly, I feel much better now, but still planning on saying something to him, though. It was just a nice reminder that he does find me attractive and just doesn't think before he speaks. It's not an excuse, but I'm thinking that's genuinely what it is. So there are two things here. So for one, this is still clearly bugging her. Like, she's being able to be jokey now. And women are great for that. Women are very fluid with their emotions. So the good thing is you can say something hurtful to them, and then like a couple of days later, they'll be joking with you and laughing again. And it'll seem like they'll do it to where you'll think that like they're completely over what you said, and that they're over it. Nothing's wrong now. Okay. But just because she's in a moment right now where she's having a good time with you doesn't mean the emotion can't come back up about that thing that you said that really kind of hurt her feelings. And it could be like you're just joking and then you're whatever. Next thing you know, she starts thinking about things and she's staring off to the distance. And it's like, oh, the boob comment comes back in her head. And now she's like thinking about that again. Hey, babe. So, I know I just wanted to, clear the air again about this boob thing. And I can guarantee you that's going to be a conversation that if he stays with her is going to come up at least 3 or 4 times a year for the rest of his life. About the time that he called, she could be like, they could be in bed together and he could be like, oh, babe, I just find you so hot and attractive. And I just want to just take you right now. And she'd be like, oh, you find me attractive, except for my boobs, right? It'll be a side comment, but it's going to come up because you brought it up, because you had to mention that thing. Okay. So I typically err on the side of, especially with body things, women's bodies are already being, they're already judging their bodies based on how the media looks at their bodies and how they feel about themselves. So they're already in their own heads giving regular comments about their bodies. But when you say something, it's going to almost like give confirmation. And it could be a thing where you're not trying to confirm anything at all. This guy could very much like her despite having small boobs, but that comment's going to be in her head, but he's judging me about my small boobs. So I typically try to steer clear from like making comments about women's bodies. They come to me and say, hey, do you think I'm too big? Do you think I'm too small? This is that. I just say, hey, babe, you know what? I like you the way you are. You're great with me. And that's really all they want to hear. They just want to hear that they look nice and that you, in your eyes, they are like the best thing ever. But these little side comments about, oh, you got this weird looking arm. Oh, except for your little freckle right there. Oh, you got that little thing on your finger. Like, I typically tend to err on the side of if it's not helping the relationship, why make a comment about it? So if you have a negative comment to say about a body, is that going to make her feel good and help the relationship, or is it going to make her feel bad and probably add a little chunk in your armor? I tend to try to stay away from those kind of things because I don't like the idea of saying something unintentionally that could hurt their feelings. So I just kind of know these are general areas that women typically find offensive about themselves, and I don't want the thing that I say to be the thing that sticks in their head and makes them feel bad years after we're still together or we're not. Like that's just not the responsibility I want to take on. Okay. So yeah. So that's it for that one. And now we're getting to the meat of this thing, which is what I call the 7 stages of accepting the realities of female attraction. And I thought about this because when I was going through my own personal journey of dating early on, like in my later high school and college years, there were a lot of ideas that I had about dating that I think a lot of men get taught. And as an introvert, I'm sitting there in my room analyzing these things. I'm looking at movies, I'm listening to music, I'm reading Q&As in various magazines written by women talking about, oh, I like a guy that does this thing. I want a guy that compliments me all the time. Oh, a guy that shows up on the doorstep with flowers is great. Oh, I want a guy that when he takes me out, he's not playing games and he's going to text me back right away. And he's going to set up a date on the date that we're on already. And he's going to want to meet my friends really, really soon. And he's going to like shower me with compliments and he's going to want to do all this stuff. And because most guys are typically literal, we read this stuff, we hear this stuff, and we think, okay, if women are telling us that this stuff works, and if society is telling us this stuff works to attract women, these are the things that I'm going to do. And what happens is, as you're doing these things, a part of you feels like this isn't working the way that people are telling me it should. Like I'm doing the things and saying the things and acting in ways that would dictate that this is how women want to be treated and this is how I should attract them. I should be respectful, I should be nice, I should be, putting coats over puddles. I'm seeing this in other forms of media working, so this should be working for me, and it is not. But you continue to do those things because you have no other idea of what is supposed to be working. And so I had my come to Jesus moments a few times, but particularly in my middle to late years in college, it was like a 2-year situation where I had a couple situations with women that just didn't play out the way I wanted them to. And I really started to analyze, like, I seem to be doing all the things right on my end, at least it's based on what I've taught, but yet it's not working. Why isn't this working? And what I came to realize is that I just had the wrong sources of information in terms of the things that I was looking at that were dictating the things I need to be doing in relationships. They were the wrong sources. And as I started to realize that, I recognized, okay, I need to find, there must be other sources out there that have really better ideas of what to do. And I talk about this, by the way, in my book, No Girls for You, The Ultimate Guide to Losing the Girl of Your Dreams, which you can find at the website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. It's a great book that talks about, it's a book that I wrote as a result of coming to this moment where I was finally able to accept that all these things in these 12 chapters that I talk about are things that I was doing to try to get women, but it was actually making me lose women. So it's a really great read if you're trying to recognize, like in a way that's able easy for you to digest why it is the things you're doing right now don't actually work. Okay, that's the website introvertdatingsuccess.com/ebooks. But anyway, so yeah, I took a break. In the book, I talk about how I took a break in my junior year to go on a 5-month tour with these guys for a play. I was in a theater program, and I got into this play that was a touring play. And it was during that time I got to deal with. I was in a van for 6 months with 5 other guys, 2 of whom were straight, or 3 of whom were straight, but 2 of whom had a really good grasp of how to get women. And so what would happen is we would go to these cities. We would do the play in the morning at these schools. It was like an elementary school type play. So about Black history. So we would do the play, and then we'd drive 6 or 7 hours to the next state. And then we'd unpack our stuff for the night. And then once we were there, we had a night to just do whatever. And so these 2 dudes would go out to clubs and just hit on women. And when I say hit on women, I mean like they would go there within the span of like 5 minutes of us being there. They'd already be talking to some girls, making them laugh, talking to them in a certain way that I would certainly never talk to them. And then they were able to like just talk that game and show them a good time. And next thing you know, some of them were coming back to the hotel with them. And I saw this for 5 months straight. And so I'm looking and like, okay, these guys clearly know something about this that I don't, because here I am trying to be friends with girls for 3 to 4 months at a time and trying to get to know them and trying to really listen to them and spend time with them and, fill out their feelings and stuff like that. And I'm getting nowhere. And these dudes are going out to clubs first night, getting the girl, first night, getting numbers, getting hookups, getting kisses in the club. Like, what's going on? And so, long story short, I started looking at them. I started picking their brain for what they're doing. I started looking up various sources that really kind of broke some myths about how I felt that dating should work and why it doesn't work that way. And in the process of going through my own awakening from first finding this information and practicing it, and then starting to like kind of break down like idea after idea of what I thought should work, I realized that I was going through a process that was much like the grieving process. Because when somebody dies, there's typically like 7 stages that people go through, and I'll read those stages briefly. So there's shock, denial, anger, guilt, sorrow and depression, acceptance, and then engaging in life. Okay, those are typically the things. So, like for example, let's say somebody dies. Let's say somebody, your family dies. First, there's the shock of the event. Oh my God, this happened. Then there's denial. No, this couldn't have happened. This can't be. Then there's anger. Why did this happen, God? Why? Then there's guilt. Maybe it's something that I did that could have kept them here. Then there's like sorrow and depression. I'm so mad they're not here. I'm just so depressed. Then there's acceptance. They're dead. Okay, life moves on. And then there's engaging life. Look, I'm moving on with life. I still remember this person, but I'm going to move on and make life better. Okay. So in doing a parallel, I realized, oh crap, this is the same process that guys go through when they're starting to learn about the ways in which their current methods of dating don't work and the ways that actually do work. Because it really is like a grieving process. You essentially have to grieve the ideas that you had that you thought should work, and then B, the person that you were that you thought was up to this point a good guy that just happened not to get women, and recognizing that that version of that guy can't be around anymore if you actually want to attract women in a way that is effective. So what I'm going to do for you guys is I'm going to go through the 7 stages of accepting the realities of female attraction as is dictated by the 7 stages of grief. Okay. And this is based on my own personal journey too, and the journey of others that I've coached. Because what's also interesting too is like, as I do these shows, I'll occasionally look in the comment section or look in the chat stream, and I'll see people that I'll say an idea about something, and they'll say like, that's not true, that's not a thing, how can dare you, blah blah blah. And my first thought is like, oh, they're at stage 1. They're at stage 1 and 2, which is the shock stage that this can't be a truthful reality that Harry's talking about. And then denial, which is like, no way, the thing you're saying is not true. Things should work this way. And the reality is, we think that things should work a certain way. And that's the hardest part of this when you're going through this grieving process. The hardest part to accept is that your reality and the story you've told yourself about how dating should work, and the things that you feel haven't worked for you, and thinking like, oh, it's been the world's fault to this point, or all women are crazy, or this is really the reason why they don't like me because they're just not in their right mind. You have to now get rid of all that stuff and face the reality that you are actually the problem. That the reason that you haven't been successful is because you haven't had the knowledge up to this point to really be an effective dater. And that is a hard thing to be able to accept. And that's why there's 7 steps. So let's go through these steps, shall we? The first step of going through the 7 stages of accepting the reality of female attraction is shock. When I went to the club with these guys, and was looking at what they were saying and doing, it blew my mind. Because as the conservatively nice guy from a southern town that was trying to woo these women in a gentlemanly way, seeing these guys do the complete opposite was like, what is this? What's going on? And then doing research into other guys out there, whether it's on the internet or through these various programs, that said, hey, no, I do this thing to get women. What you're doing doesn't work, and here's why. And looking at it actually work in real time, whether it was like video examples or whatever, was just like, what is going on? And it's a shock because, again, I'm thinking I have a certain viewpoint of how this stuff should work. And I realize none of it's working, but it should work. But why is their stuff working better and so much quicker? Why is it, I'm going 2 to 3 months trying to get to know a woman, and they're being able to get her to go to bed within a span of like 2 hours at a club. Like, that was a really big shock to my system. At the time, I was 21 years old and hadn't had any success with women. I hadn't really had a girlfriend, definitely hadn't done any hookups. So to come from my reality and then see, but their reality is one that, like, they're able to just do it. Like, that was a really big shock. And that's in a shock that a lot of guys go through early on, whereby they start hearing about like things like, going from red pill to blue pill, or like recognizing that, oh, you don't have to talk nice to women all the time or agree with her all the time to be able to get her to be attracted and respect you. Like, those are just small examples of things that are shocks to systems, because we've been taught, you got to be respectful. You got to make sure that, women are these gentle creatures and they want to be treated as such. And you got to make sure that you're always blah, blah, blah with them. And none of that was true. And that is a thing that if you're coming to this in a new space, hearing that those things are necessary, big shock, which then leads to number 2, which is denial. You are going to emphatically want to think that everything you're learning, seeing, and being taught should be a lie. Like, for example, I use this example all the time on the show. The whole thing about calling women. Like, I go on dates with women, I show them the best time possible, and then I wait 4 to 5 days to call them. And most people's response to that is, that's not going to work. That's playing games. Women are not going to respect that. If you don't call them back right away, of course they're going to, have somebody else in the wings if you don't call them back right away. How dare you? Now, my years of dating up to this point have taught me that when I do call the same day as the date that I've had or the next day, women typically become unattracted. My experience has also taught me at this point that when I wait 4 or 5 days and then I take them on another date, wait another 4 or 5 days, the attraction builds quicker. I have the experience at this point to know that waiting for 4 or 5 days is a good thing. But for people that are coming to this, that are new and hearing this, they're going to be in denial because it doesn't make logical sense. And that's the problem with us guys, is that we stick in this thing of like, A plus B, or 1 plus 2 must equal 3. You can't tell me that 1 plus 2 equals 4, or that 1 plus 1 equals 3. Think about that. 1 plus 1 equals 3. Is that accurate? No, unless you have kids, because if it's one person and one person, they get together, boop, you make 3 people. So that's the thing where you have to realize that your logic and your version of how you think this should work, if it's not helping your reality, it's because your reality is the one that's actually screwed up, not the one that you're getting the advice from. Okay. But recognize that when you first hear these new things, you're going to have this feeling of, this shouldn't work. No, he's got to be crazy. Does that really work? Why would women fall for that? No, they want to do this. This is what you're going to go through, that because up to this point, your experiences, even if you've had bad experience with women, your training up to this point has dictated that this is the truth, not the stuff over here. But this stuff over here is working. Your stuff's not. This stuff is, but you're going to still be in denial of this stuff because it's not familiar to you yet, and you haven't actually gone through the pains of practicing it and having the results to be able to realize that this is your new reality. This is the reality that actually works for this stuff. Okay. So that's the second thing, is denial. You're going to go through a denial phase, and when you feel it come up, recognize that you are denying it, and that you got to see beyond the denial and see if it's really something that's truthful. So then what's going to happen is stage 3, which is anger. And what this means is that once you start to kind of see more and more that the things you're denying are actually things that really do work, you're going to be so mad. You're going to be mad at women in general, that you're going to be mad. You're going to think that they're stupid. You're going to be mad at them for falling for all these so-called tricks of the trade that you don't think you should need to do in the first place. You're going to be thinking back to like all the women in the past that you would have probably had a chance with had you not done these dumb moves, and like, how dare they don't fall for these things, and why can't they just like you as a nice guy? You're going to be mad at yourself for not being the kind of guy up to this point that could be able to get women, especially if you've had women that you really, really liked in the past and they just like stop seeing you or stop talking to you. And it was all because you didn't do these one or two simple things that these guys are telling you should have done that would have kept her in the good graces and probably gotten you the chance to better. Like you're going to have all these things that are going to just bubble up in you once you start leaning towards the acceptance side, but also be like, oh my God, this is making me angry. And I went through this a lot of years, like, no, not a lot of years, but like as I was on the tour and seeing stuff and reading stuff, I started thinking back, which is like, man, like, this is why this girl at school wouldn't date me. And this is the thing that I did wrong. And how could they blah, blah. And you're going to be mad at it because, again, part of this is also you have an idea of female nature. You've been taught that women are a certain way and that they're sweet and kind and caring and loving, and that therefore they want this kind of guy. And you didn't know anything about things like attraction triggers or certain triad traits that make them want to fall for one particular guy, or simple things like, oh, having a 5 o'clock shadow is actually preferable to being a clean shaven guy. Like these are things you just didn't know. But you went all these time without this knowledge, and now you're starting to get it, but you're still gonna be mad that you have to even have this new knowledge in the first place, because it means, again, you have to now basically kill off the previous version of you, the version of you that wasn't getting women, the version of you that was gullible to all this stuff that you believe, because it's not beliefs that are actually relevant to you being able to get women. And that's going to be a hard thing to get over. And what I recommend, guys, that when that anger comes, feel it. Like, don't deny the anger. Don't like try to be like, I'm not angry, I'm not mad. No, feel that, because you need to really feel that and go through it to be able to start being more accepting of new information and new realities about female attraction in general. Okay. Women can't help well, that's not true. Women can help on some level the way that they are, but all this stuff is basically ingrained in us from like the day we're born, in terms of like the things that we are attracted to just naturally. Nothing, because you can be taught and you can be trained to like different things and recognize certain things that are toxic. So yes, women can recognize these certain things that I'm attracted to are toxic, and therefore I should consider like what the alternative to this is. But just on a natural level, there are just some things that women typically find more attractive than others. And a lot of those things aren't things that you've been taught, like being nice or being supplemental or complimented all the time. Like those are things that in theory should work, but there's reasons behind why those things do not work. And once you know what those things are, then you can start to grasp like, oh, okay, so this is why this particular action doesn't work so well. So now let me get rid of doing that and find out what really does work. That's why I got a whole book on my website, introvertdatingsuccess.com, that is about this. Okay. So then the fourth stage is guilt. And with the death thing, they talk about how like, oh, you might feel guilty because, oh, if I didn't tell my dad to go out to get some food, he wouldn't have got hit by a car. So you feel guilty that this is your fault. For relationships, the guilt's going to be more on the end of, oh man, like there were certain things that you did to turn women off that in hindsight you wish you hadn't done. I think back to certain ways that I was, or certain gifts that I got women, or just certain things that I was doing that I was like, man, like this woman was legitimately attracted to me, and yet I was doing things that turned her off to where she couldn't now have a positive experience dating me and felt that she had to go someplace else. And you can start to guilt trip yourself about this. Man, if I had been this way, or if I should have done this thing, this girl would have liked me more, or whatever. And it's fine to go through that also, but recognize, guy, that you didn't know. I don't want you to browbeat yourself too much about the fact that you didn't know certain information. Hey, I grew up without a dad after the age 9. There was a lot of stuff that I missed out on in terms of man lessons, in terms of being able to attract women, that I had to be able to forgive myself for not knowing. Like, hey, dude, you just didn't know it. It's fine. And honestly, some of those girls that you wanted to date, it probably wouldn't have worked out anyway. And you actually dodged bullets, and to some level, some of those women that I wanted to date ended up having like horrible lives later, or, hadn't quite figured themselves out yet in terms of their life journey. And that's totally fine. So you have to learn not to browbeat yourself so much about that, because like I said, you can't be mad at something you didn't know. So then it goes to the fifth stage, which is sorrow and depression. And this is the part that I went through when I went back to college that year. And I thought that I knew everything I needed to know about women. And I knew at this point, okay, I know the things to say to them and do, but I still didn't have the practice of doing that stuff. So I would do some new things, it would work, and then I'd be like, yay, it worked, and I'd revert back to my old self. So there were women that in my first senior year of college that I got attracted to. I started trying to do some stuff and it was working, but then I would revert back and be like, well, I don't want to, push the envelope too much. And I'm still kind of like, I want to make sure that they know I respect them or whatever. And then those situations went bad and I got really depressed. I got so depressed that I actually failed out my first senior year of college, because I was just like, I can't figure this girl stuff out. I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm just so depressed. And I would literally just not go to class, or I wouldn't do work on time, and I would just be in my apartment, just kind of sitting there watching TV all day, just kind of like throwing a pity party for myself. And then like the day that I wasn't going to graduate, I suddenly woke up like, dude, like you let this stuff affect you so bad because you weren't able to accept the fact that women act a certain way and that you still didn't quite have your game on point. You got to get yourself together. And that's when I got myself together and I started really analyzing, okay, let me really just sit down and really start to recognize that, okay, even though I studied this stuff, I was still doing these things over here that weren't beneficial. Let me just kind of map out what those things were. And that's how I ended up writing this book, No Girls for You, The Ultimate Guide to Losing the Girl of Your Dreams. Was I went through all the stuff I was doing wrong and said, let me write a book for guys about if you want to lose a girl, do these things, and here's why. And so it comes off sarcastic, but it really was based on a lot of pain that I was going through at the time in terms of like, I was doing all this stuff still that I thought should get women and it didn't. And it really got me depressed. And I didn't even recognize I'd never been depressed in my life. And I didn't even recognize I was going through a mini depression until after I didn't graduate. It was like, oh crap, like what was I going through? I was freaking depressed. Holy crap. And so I want you to be able to feel that in a more healthy way. Like I don't want you to like lose your job over this or, start wanting to attack people because of, this idea of having to accept the reality that women aren't the way that you think they should be, or that you have to now figure out a different way to do that. Okay. But just recognize that you're going to have that feeling of like, I just can't get girls the way that I am right now. And I just feel so bad about that. And I'm depressed and I'm angry, and you need to feel it. Again, these are emotions that a lot of guys try to mask, but I want you to recognize you're going to feel these things. And when it comes, recognize, oh crap, I'm feeling depressed about this stuff right now, and work through it. Okay. But work through it and feel it, because I don't want you to be one of those guys that just ignores it. And then you end up like shooting up a post office somewhere because you're mad that Lillian didn't want to date you anymore. Like, just it's something we all go through, guy. And it's just part of the growth of becoming the man on the other side that recognizes there are new things I need to learn to make this effective for me. Okay. So that's the fifth thing. But then the sixth thing is acceptance. Eventually, you get to a point where it goes from you having to think, I want women to be a certain way. And you're almost like trying to will upon them, like, hey, you should be accepting me because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. You should want me to see you all the time. You should want me to text you all the time. You should want me to compliment you more. You should want me to do X, Y, and Z. And you start to accept the reality of how they are. You accept that they don't need to see you all the time. You accept that sometimes the best way to attract a woman is to make her feel anxious and to not give her the complete clarity that you're all the way in love with her, And these are things that suck and you probably will not want to do them. But as you start to recognize what really works on women, you'll start to be more accepting of it. And what's important too is you'll start to practice these things. You'll do them more. You'll see that they work. And then it'll become even easier to accept, oh, this is just the way that women need to feel, or the things that you have to do in order to make them think of you as a potential mate. And there's things that they do too. Like, I don't want you to feel bad about that, because there are things that women do purposefully to make us feel great. There was one time I was dating somebody, and out of nowhere, like they said, I'm going to make dinner for you. It's like, okay, that's great. And I had told them early on, like I had a real taste for like Southern food. And I love because here in California, they have great soul food restaurants. And I'm a big fan of like oxtail, which I don't know how to make. I've only had it a couple of times that at girls that I've dated, but like I usually have to go to the restaurant to get it. Okay. Fast forward a few weeks later, and this girl wants to cook for me, and she comes over. I go over there, and she's like made all this food and stuff. Like she's made like greens and yams, all stuff. And it's like, but she won't tell me like the main thing she made. I'm like, oh, it's a surprise. She's like, it's a surprise. I can't tell you. So finally, after about an hour of me being there, the cooking is done, and I go into the kitchen, and I look on the stove, and I see just a bunch of oxtails made. And I was just like, I was all over her at that point. But the point is, somewhere she had to have known, like, oh, if I just pay attention and make his favorite thing, that's going to make him want to like me even more. They have their own things that they do to get us. Okay. So it's in our best interest to learn things about them that's going to attract them. And they're not going to always sound like pretty things, but we're not going for what's going to be the most emotionally sensitive thing to do. We're going for the things that in the attraction stage you need to do that are going to get her attracted to you. Now, I'm going to do a show later on at some point about the attraction stage versus the relationship stage. I think I've done a show like that, but I really want to talk about specifically like the ins and outs of like a lot of guys try to do stuff during the relationship stage that they should be saving they're doing stuff during the relationship stage. Sorry, during the dating stage. They're doing stuff during the dating stage that they should be doing in the relationship stage. And there are different ways to go about doing that. Okay. But the point is that, yeah, so you have to be accepting of the idea that the reality you have about women is not the one that's going to work. Once you're able to accept that, it's going to be easy to move on to number 7, which is engaging in life, meaning you're going to be able to start putting together a plan of action and dream about a potential future with women by way of knowing what attracts them and then what keeps them and then what things are going to make sure that we're going to have a long lasting relationship. Okay. But you have to go through this. Okay. So if you're a guy that up to this point has not been having the best luck with women, then recognize you're doing something wrong. Yes, there are some women out there that are just messed up and they're confused and they like to mess with guys' heads, but a lot of this is on you and the fact that you just don't have the stuff right now that you need to really have an effective dating life. And that can change, but recognize that when you start to read stuff, study stuff, listen to podcasts, watch shows like this, that you're going to hear a lot of stuff that is, you're just on first listen is not going to gel well. It's going to be a shock. You're going to deny it. You're going to probably be mad about it or the fact that it even works. You're going to think it's manipulation tactics and, it's just not going to work. And how dare I should just be myself and this and that. But recognize once you get past that there's a brighter end to this, which is, again, I was that way once. Now I'm a guy that because I recognize the realities of dating, I don't get mad. I don't get pissed off. I know what works. I know what doesn't. I know if I'm approaching a girl and it's not quite working out the way I wanted to, that there might be a level she just wasn't attracted, but there's also a level okay, what things that I say or do in the approach or in the process of the dating phase that caused her to go away. And if you're able to do that, it means that you've actually been able to lessen your ego and not be so attached to the outcome to where it's okay, who you are right now is fine, but there could be things you can add to who you are to make you a better version that's able to effectively date women. And there's nothing wrong with trying to find out who that version of you is or what you need to do to get there. Okay. But just recognize that you're going to feel these things. It's normal. It's perfectly fine. And you'll come out the other end a more effective dater that's able to get the women he wants. Okay. So hopefully I'm able to help you on that journey. I can definitely help you out if you go to the website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. Right now, I actually have there a free book. So one of the major things that I went through in terms of my 7 stages was the idea of texting, because, we get the idea that we should be texting them all the time in order to attract them. And I say on the show all the time, texting kills relationships. But I really should say texting kills attraction. And there's a reason to that, because most guys do texting the wrong way. So I've offered a free book at my website. You can go download it right now on the front page. It's called Texting Like a Boss. And it's 21 simple key tips that are basically laid out do's and don'ts for more effective texting. So if you're a guy that's ever been left on red, or you were texting a girl for a while and things were going great, and then she just kind of slowly started either not texting as much or leaving 1 or 2 word answers, then this book's going to really help you understand why that is. Okay. And it's a free download. So just go to the website, fill in your name and email address, and you will get it in your email box right now. All right. But that's all we got for today, guys. Thanks for tuning into the show. For more of these shows, go to introvertdatingsuccess.com. Be sure to check us out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at protestparty.tv. And be sure to check out the website for ebooks, programs, and much, much more. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will catch you guys on the next podcast. I'm out. Peace. Joe's in the house, my love's in the house. Uncle Joe's in the house, my love's in the house. I said VOTE on November 3. Biden and Harris, cause that Donald Trump, wait. Yeah, I'm voting for Biden and Harris. Mail-in ballot or the polls for Biden and Harris. Gotta save the nation's soul with Biden and Harris. Joseph Biden is the next in charge, taking back that White House yard. Kamala Harris is his running mate, fighting back against QAnon. They go low, but we go high. Look at his record, look at her drive. Boost the morale, close the divide. This country is hurt, Biden's your guy. Trump don't cheat, ain't no surprise. Killing the post office from the inside. He trying to stop your big fat vote so we can keep telling lies. What a team, it's a dream. Make me wanna shout and scream. Pence and Trump, so obscene. But Joe and Kamala, so fresh and so clean.
Gotta be H&B, vote on November 3. Don't stay home for my years of the CBC. I do not wanna do it, I'm about to lose my sanity. But Joe is so boring. Oh really? Well that's cool with me. Statesmanship, they both drift. Climate change, gonna get that fixed. Military budget, gonna get more change. The troops ain't gotta worry about it, ain't thing. Donate your cash or your time for Biden and Harris. You bout to die, stay alive. Vote Biden and Harris, so love the nation. Who gon' save it? Vote Biden and Harris. If you want change, send your vote and vote Biden and Harris.
Look, we need a straight shooter, we need a case closer, need to free from jail all the weed smokers. We need Trump fired cause he's mediocre. With Republicans, they gon' reach over. If you in college and earning your credits, they'll take your loan, lower your payments. Got a small business, well, they're trying to help it. All of the farmers, they'll be well protected. They won't take your guns or leave you broke. Joe and Kamala, bringing back hope. They're going to hunt down a new cure for corona and not treat this thing like a hoax. Their campaign's on fire, they move about calmly while Trump has no focus. He moves like a zombie, he's racist like the cops in Wisconsin. And let's not forget he supported the Nazis.
Kamala, she a boss chick, aka BP pick little girls, they can dream it. Teaming up with Joe, give us something to believe in. About to be a fight, Trump and Pence take a beating. The White House, Joe's the one we needin'. Been up in there once, he's a proven leader. Big P stands for presidential, making good decisions and he's got credentials. Donald tried man, but he can't hang. His response to Rona caused death and pain. Got non-believers making grave visits. If you don't believe me, ask Herman Cain.
Yeah, I'm voting for Biden and Harris. Mail-in ballot or the polls for Biden and Harris. Gotta save the nation's soul with Biden and Harris. Get back on top, gotta swap for Biden and Harris. Mike Pence and Donald, they both flop. Vote Biden and Harris. I'm talking va, va, va. That's Biden and Harris. This Kofefi's gonna stop with Biden and Harris. Yeah. Uncle Joe's in the house, Uncle Joe's in the house, Uncle Joe's in the house,